And I just had a chance to catch up and share a few words and some time with Governor Moore downstairs. And I'll tell you, it's an impressive story, and I think it's so fitting, just your story, your history, what you've been through, your relationship with sports, obviously playing right here at Johns Hopkins. For those who don't know in the audience, give us a little bit of just your connection, your history to sports and why it's played such a big role in your life up until this point.
Yeah, no, and thank you, and it's really good to be with everybody, and like, I'm kind of like fanning out right now. I'm like hanging out with Greg Olsen. This is actually kind of crazy for me, so this is a very big deal. So I'm thankful, nervous, but very thankful for you, sincerely. Thank you for all you do.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much.
You know, I mean, sports. I think where some of my earliest, some of my best, some of my worst, some of my most informative memories were with sports. You know, I remember the role that basketball played for me coming up, for example, where, you know, I'm probably, by the way, the most improbable governor in America, truthfully. I was raised by an immigrant single mom. And my dad died in front of me when I was 3 years old. My mom moved us up to go live with my grandparents up in the Bronx. And I remember literally some of the earliest memories I have was actually on a basketball court in the Bronx, where it was a place of escape. It was a place where you felt safe. It's a place where you met some of your, you know, lifelong friends. It was a place where you learned all the beautiful things that you can learn from team sports. You know, how to win properly, how to lose properly. You know, the importance of being able to trust the people to your left and your right, and to make sure that you're practicing so they can trust you back. So I think that sports has always played an outsized role in my life, in my understanding, in my acceptance. It's a place that even as we moved around a lot when I was young, do you know where you could always meet people and always bring new friendships? On the court, on the field. It was a place where you built some of your strongest bonds. And so I'm a big believer in the role that sports can be, not just unifying, but also that sports can really be transformative as well.
That's awesome. And one of the things that's been kind of a constant theme when you listen to everybody speak over the last couple days is where there is a healthy community, usually before that is a healthy youth sports environment, whether that's after school programs, whether that's in school, out of school programs run by really dedicated, good leadership in the building, outside the building. Just now, as you kind of now run the state of Maryland, and you know, whether it's here in Baltimore or just across the state in general, like how has your administration, how have you personally taken your experiences with sport, how important it was in shaping you as an individual, getting to this point and saying, okay, I know what sports did for me. I'm going to continue to implement more policies, implement more programs, more grants to better serve the youth sports community here in Baltimore and around the entire state of Maryland.
You know, it's been something that we've prioritized, and I think we prioritize it for a bunch of different reasons. One, we really try to prioritize it because if you want to meet people where they are, oftentimes when you're talking about kids and community and youth, meet them on fields, on courts, on places where they want to be. Because I never believe in the idea of that we're asking people when it comes to policy making, and you know, and Greg and I were talking. I've never run for office before in my life. Governor was the first office I ever ran for.
Decided to start at governor.
I was going to be governor. Why not? Why not?
Most people just start at governor. They wake up, they say, I'm going to be the governor, and they're the governor. That's very common.
And it's true. And like literally, our first poll that we did, I'm not voting, was polling higher than Wes Moore. I mean, it was actually a very embarrassing and humbling experience. But one thing I've just never understood is why somehow people who sit in these seats expect people to come to them. That's not the way it works. And if you do that, you're going to find yourself alone most of the time. You've got to meet people where they are. And so I believe if you really want to speak to people, if you really want to speak to youth, go to the things that attract them. Go to the places that they are. And oftentimes, it's sport. That's the way you're going to be able to get their attention. That's the way we're going to be able to get their confidence. The other thing I really believe deeply about sports is it is as much mental exercise and mental health as it is anything else. You know, like for example, you know, we're talking earlier. The Naval Academy is kind enough that I work out every morning at 6 o'clock at the Naval Academy, and I say they're kind enough because I'm an Army guy. So the fact they let me on the base is really kind of them and wonderful. Even though, even though I'm still trying to figure out who I need to talk to about the fact that they put Beat Army everywhere, and those are taxpayer dollars that they are using for that propaganda. Um, but, but the thing about it is, and people ask, why are you so committed to it? And my answer, honestly, is for me, it's mental health, right? It's 1 hour during the day where I'm not tethered to something. I'm not tethered to a phone. I'm not receiving a briefing. No one's asked me to make any decisions. It's my hour. And I feel like part of the thing that we have to be able to do for our young people is you've got to give them space to really take care of themselves. And not just take care of themselves physically, but take care of themselves mentally. And that's one of the reasons I think we've just been so insistent in our administration. Like, we've got to focus on play. We've got to focus on sport. We've got to focus on exercise. We've got to focus on these things because it's not just about how we're creating a more physically competitive environment in society. It's because I care about mental health as well, and I just believe this is one of the greatest places to be able to develop that sense of confidence in mental health.
We had Kevin Plank up here, the founder, of course, of Under Armour. I know you guys work closely in a lot of the initiatives here locally. And one of their big pushes through Project Rampart is the direct correlation between youth participation and high school graduation rates and improving them in the Baltimore area and beyond. Maryland is actually, as a state, slightly above the national average in participation rate in youth sports. But in some of the underserved, lower class neighborhoods and areas, primarily here in Baltimore, those numbers are a little lower. So, like, as you look at it, like, across the state, success, right, above the national average, getting a lot of participation, and obviously what that means for the kids as they get older and approach graduation. What more, like, what boots on the ground initiatives can your administration continue to force alongside the likes of Under Armour and what they're doing, primarily here in Baltimore, to raise those lower income participation rates that we know are so imperative towards later success?
And I think about Kevin and the work at Under Armour, and I got to tell you, they have been remarkable partners to this day. I mean, Kevin's commitment to the city and Under Armour's commitment to the city and to the state is it's absolutely second to none. And I remember speaking with them, we introduced and passed something called the Enough Act. And what the Enough is, Enough actually stands for engaging neighborhoods, organizations, unions, governments, and households. So Enough is an acronym, but also it's actually a governance philosophy. And the whole point of it is how we engaging every single aspect of our society, the business community, nonprofit community, parents, neighbors, to be able to focus on the issue of concentrated child poverty. Because part of the reason we introduced Enough is if you look at the map and the heat map of where child poverty exists, there's a couple things that I can tell you. One is that it's everywhere. It's urban, it's rural, it's suburban, and we're talking about children whose destinies are being determined before they even have a say. The second thing I can tell you is this. The heat map that we look at for the state of Maryland in 2024, one of the most heartbreaking things is it looks exactly the same in 2014 and exactly the same in 2004, except the only difference is now it's just a little bit more red. Right? So the neighborhoods aren't changing. This neglect is chronic, and this neglect is generational. And so really with the Enough Act, what we introduced and just recently got passed and got passed bipartisan, it's saying how can we enlist every aspect of society to be able to follow the data? I can tell you the zip codes. I can tell you the neighborhoods. And for these areas that have just been so chronically neglected, urban, rural, and suburban, what could it look like if we flooded them with resources? What could that mean for the children who call those places home? And that includes everything from how are we thinking about schools and transportation and housing, but also includes things like how are you incentivizing the private sector to say, I'm going to create more employment opportunities there. I'm going to get nonprofit organizations that say, okay, we focus on building football fields. How can I incentivize you to build football fields in these zip codes, right? And so it's how are we just thinking differently about following what the data is telling us. Because I feel like part of the challenge of policy making is everything is like peanut butter. It's like all spread evenly. Like, that's not what the data shows, though. Follow the data. And if you follow the data, I think you're going to get better results.
Well, it's funny, along those lines, just last year, the Maryland Office for Tourism and Development, you guys gave $200,000 specifically for youth sports nonprofits, and you kind of scattered them, along the lines of what you're talking about. You kind of scattered them around nonprofits doing great work. So,
right.
Again, a great example of, it's not just campaign speak. It's not just things that sound great, but your administration, the state in general, continues to provide those resources. So kudos to you. I'd love to give you the opportunity, Governor Moore, to talk about one of your signature campaign promises, the service year option. We actually were talking about it downstairs, and you told a really cool story about meeting the governor from Utah, and a Democrat and a Republican are sharing a stage, and people are looking at you like you guys are crazy. But I'd love to give you an opportunity to share that, because I know it's a program and an initiative that's super close to you personally and your administration's promises when you ran, and would love to let you kind of give a better explanation of it to the audience.
It's really cool because, and honestly, I think a lot of it came from me, from the military, where, when I ran for governor, I had people who I served with in Afghanistan. I was a paratrooper with the 82nd Airborne. I had people who I served with in Afghanistan who came and campaigned for me. And many of them were not Marylanders, and many of them were not Democrats. They literally just came and were door knocking on my behalf and simply saying, well, I just want to tell you about the guy that I served with. And that was a really important lesson, because I just believe deeply that service is sticky. And people who serve together generally stay together. And so we introduced legislation, got it passed bipartisan, that Maryland became the first state in this country that now has a service year option for all of our high school graduates. So at the end of high school, or GED or equivalency, each young person has a chance to have a paid year of service. And they can choose however they want to do it. They can work in the environment, they can work in serving young people, they can serve returning citizens, they can serve veterans, they can serve the environment. It doesn't matter. The only thing we ask them to do is this: find that thing that makes your heart beat a little bit faster and go after it. And we did it because we're big believers in experiential learning. We did it because I believe in earned financial cushions for people that do the work. We did it because it's actually become a great workforce development tool. And we did it because I believe deeply that in this time of this political divisiveness and political vitriol, and where people seem to care more that, where the idea come from than is it a good idea, I believe that service will save us. And I love that Maryland is leading the way on this. And I'm excited about the fact that, even speaking about, like my friend Spencer Cox, who's the governor from Utah, who's now going to be incorporating it into their state, he's a Republican, is that while Maryland is the first state to do this, we're not going to be the last. And that makes me very happy.
Well, that's it. Well, something else right along, you're good at this. You should, after you do politics, you should just decide to go be the president and then get into television and just keep adding to your bio. We'll be here for 3 hours waiting for you to be introduced for your next speaking event. But, something else that you've led the way in, you're the first governor, and I know you're excited to kind of announce it today, so I won't spill the beans, but the Children's Bill of Rights in Sports, which is directly tied to the work of the Aspen Institute and Project Play. I won't spill the beans, but you are the first governor to
sign on, yes. And it's great. Yeah, it's cool.
I felt like it was better. I didn't want to say it. That kind of
no, and I love it. And I love the work that Aspen is leading on. And first, Elliot, it's great to see you, man. It's true. I have literally known him, and when he was the head of the Rhodes Trust when I first became a Rhodes Scholar. So I can tell you so much of my journey was.
I mean, are we kidding me with this resume? I mean, enough.
but I. I'm sorry.
That's so good. I mean, Jesus. He saved 4 kids from a burning car on his way here. He didn't even break a sweat. He brought an extra suit.
But even though I'm telling you, but we're laughing earlier because I was like, I played college football, and he's like, I was like, yeah, I played at Johns Hopkins, and we're like, they have a football team at Hopkins? I was like, yeah,
I did not say that. But when they said he averaged 25 yards a catch, he looked at us and he goes, I think I only had three catches. I was like, dude, you should know by now. Too much information gets you in trouble. You averaged 25 yards a catch. No one asked how many catches. Just go with it.
That's right. That's right. No, but it's cool because, I mean, I love the work that's happening here about how we think about ways to incorporate not just youth, but sports into our ethos. Right? What are we doing to promote coaches? What are we doing to actually promote an educational process that includes sports? What are we doing to use it as places for protection and safety and educational access for our young people? And I think if you just believe in young people, if you believe in their hopes, if you believe what they can actually do, then you actually have to create not just a mindset, but create vehicles for them to be able to lead and sustain and grow healthily, right? And so, when I heard this was happening, and I was like, all these cities, are doing it, and I was like, how many states are doing it? And they're like, none yet. And I was like, one of the great things about the governor is I can just do that. So I was like, guess what? Maryland's doing that. And so I love being the governor because now Maryland is going to be the first state to sign on to this Bill of Rights, and I'm proud to do it, and I'm proud to put my signature as the first state to be able to do it, the first governor.
That's awesome. And for those of you who don't know, the Children's Bill of Rights in sports, it was a statement drafted by the Aspen Institute just saying that every child has the right to play sports, and when in the care of the adults, they have the right to be treated with respect. And I think we've heard so many people just talk about healthy environments, healthy cultures, healthy youth sports experiences tend to lead to healthy adults and healthy neighborhoods and so on and so forth. So kudos to you. That is super cool. The last thing, and we'll end on this. I know you got a lot to do. You want to sit here and answer a bunch of my questions, but you talk about just how sports is such a unifier, and it can become such a center point to a community. I was at the hotel today having lunch in between sessions, and the bartender he had the Orioles game on, and he's like, I didn't even ask him. And he's like, they're bullpen, they're struggling a little bit. Our best guy lost Tommy John, but they're good again. And and he's giving me like the whole scouting report of the team. I don't have a clue what he's talking about. I'm sorry, I haven't watched many Orioles games. And but my point is, like, you are such a big driver in like keeping the viability of the Orioles and the Camden Yards and the project. Like, how important have the role of the Ravens, the Orioles? We talk a lot about youth sports, but often great youth sports in cities is a byproduct of having great professional, collegiate leadership all the way from the top to kind of set that role. I know that was a big priority for you, and just want to give you the opportunity to just speak about the impact of having the professional organizations in Baltimore, in Maryland as a whole, how important that is.
Yeah, it's when we came on board, the Orioles lease was about to run out. And we just knew that one of the most storied franchises in all of baseball was about not to have a home. And that was just completely unacceptable to me. First of all, there's no way we're losing the Orioles on my watch. Like, my family wouldn't talk to me ever again. But also, it was because of what they meant to the soul of the city. Like, these are the Baltimore Orioles. And so we just went in and very clearly and said, we have to get this lease done. We know that others had difficulties doing before because it's tough and it's complicated. But we said it's got to be a long-term lease, and we need to be able to create winners on and off the field. That if we had a bunch of championships in a city that was dying, then what did we just do? And through a lot of hard work, and our team here did an amazing job in making it happen. Late last year, we were able to sign the Orioles up for a 30-year lease, keeping them in Baltimore for generations to come. And now we have the best young team in baseball, and it's going to bring a whole bunch of world championships to come along with it. But it was important. It was important because also it adds that measure of predictability. Because you're not going to find people who are willing to invest in the city if some of the city's leading anchors might leave. It doesn't work, right? People want predictability. And so the fact that we now have the Baltimore Orioles, the Baltimore Ravens, that are now both, frankly, not just within walking distance, but serving as two of the anchors of this larger Baltimore renaissance that's taking place right now. I am so bullish on the future of Baltimore. And part of it is because we've got our anchors laid in, and we can invest around that now. And so it's both about what it means to have these anchors and that predictability. It's also about what it means for economic development and economic growth, and the fact that you now have these pillars that can serve as these economic drivers of not just attention, but sustainability. But it's also, you now have these two anchors that serve as such important foundations for our society. 3 weeks ago, the Baltimore Orioles just announced a partnership with the Harlem Park Elementary School, where now you're going to have Baltimore Orioles taking a core place in terms of looking at the graduation rates of these young people, providing internships and new unique opportunities. The Baltimore Ravens are doing the same thing with schools and communities. You look at what's happening with Under Armour and how they're personalizing all these fields around Baltimore. Like, partnership produces progress. And everybody's got to feel a role. Everybody's got to feel like that the future of our society, that their fingerprints can actually be on them. And I love the fact that we have sports, these franchises, our athletes, these teams who don't just see themselves in Baltimore, they see themselves of Baltimore. And that is going to help drive the future that I know is just an incredibly bright future for a city and a state that we all love and we're willing to sacrifice everything for. So locking them in was a big deal, not just because I wanted my family to like me.
That helped.
That did help. But it's also because I know what sports, I know how it brings people together. I know how it can unify a society and unify a community. You have never seen a place so happy as a Monday morning after the Ravens win on Sunday. You've never seen a place rocking so hard like we saw when the Orioles made it to the postseason last year. This matters to people. And I just feel like it's that kind of energy and drive that can bring a society to a new level.
Well said. And I think in closing, whether it's politics, whether it's corporations, whether it's teams, youth sports, you want to have great environments and all that, you have to have great leadership. And I think if there's one thing in just my last hour of spending with you, leadership, you embody everything about leadership. I think that's very clear. I think the state is lucky to have you. I think Baltimore, the community, is lucky to have you. This has been an unbelievable conversation. Can we have one more round of applause for Governor Westmore?
Thank you.